Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Hello students. Friction, a necessary evil. It is necessary as well and it is an evil as well. Now how does that happen? That how is something evil necessary to us? Let us see. We have some examples, some typical examples in front of you. Holding a glass with oil on its surface. You have a glass. I am holding the glass, right? But if I apply oil on the surface of the glass, it will be very difficult for me to hold the glass and the glass will slide down and fall. So what does this tell you? That the oil that I applied reduced friction, right? So friction is necessary for us to do different works. To hold something, there is a necessity of friction. If there is no friction, we won't be able to hold anything. Then walking on wet marble floor or wet mud. How is this very difficult? Basically, there is a wet marble floor, right? So it is difficult for us to walk on a wet marble floor because it is extremely smooth. The friction has been reduced due to the presence of water on the marble. Marble itself is very smooth and then there is water on top of it, which makes it even more slippery and we fall down. This happens because the friction is reduced, right? Then walking is the best application of friction. When you walk, you are applying some force on the ground and hence you walk forward. Now if there is no friction, there is no force applied opposite to it, you will keep on moving, you will never be able to stop, right? Because the ground is not, the contact forces are not working. So in the absence of friction, walking is also not possible, right? Writing with a chalk or a pen. When you write with a chalk or a pen, it will not be possible if there is no friction. So these are some applications of friction, students. Let us see how. If an object started moving, it would never stop. If there is the absence of friction, if there is no friction, if suppose this ball started moving, if this friction is absent, then the ball will keep on moving and it will never stop, right? Without friction between the tires of automobiles and the road, we are talking about cars now, they could not be started because there is no friction, they would not get started at all or stopped or turned to change the direction of the motion. For all these purposes, to start a car from static position to motion, then to stop a car from motion to static position, and then to change the direction. When we change the direction, the tires do interlocking with the surface of the road, due to which the speed is reduced and the car is turned around, right? Car is turned around with the help of friction only. If there is no friction, the car will never stop, car will never decrease its speed and we will not be able to change the direction of the car as well, right? You could not fix a nail on the wall or tie a knot. The knot remains tied due to the force of friction. And without friction, no building could be constructed. So these are some of the very important applications of friction, due to which we understand that friction is very, very necessary to us. Without friction, the basic needs of our basic needs will not be fulfilled. We would not be able to walk. We would not be able to drive a car. We could not play because the objects once started moving can never be stopped without friction, right? So friction is very, very important, students. Now, how is it an evil? Why does it become an evil if it is so much important to us? First of all, it wears out the materials, right? How does this happen? You can take certain examples. The ball bearings or soles of a shoe. You have shoes that you wear daily and you go outside with those shoes only. You can check the soles of those shoes. They will be worn out. So what does this tell you? And in industries, there are different equipments, which there are screws are present in these equipments. These screws are worn out after some time. This happens because of friction only, right? So it is evil because it wears out materials. Then worn out steps of foot over bridges at railway stations. You must have gone to railway stations, and if you notice the stairs present at the railway station, you will see that due to excessive use of people climbing on the stairs and coming down, the stairs have worn out. This is because of the presence of friction. The opposite force that is applied on the people is the reason due to which the stairs are worn out, right? Then friction can also produce heat. Now there is an example in front of you. This example basically, this is a girl and she is trying to rub her palm. You can try it at your own as well. Basically, when you rub your palm, heat is produced, right? So due to friction, heat is also generated, which is not always good for us, right? Vigorously rub your hands together for a few minutes. So this tells us that rubbing of objects causes production of heat, right? So you must have seen that sometimes the tires of cars turn hot, and there are other substances such as there is a jar mixer. You are mixing your fruit, you're making a shake, and you're using a mixer. So when it moves, it sometimes turns hot because of the presence of friction only, right? Because the substances lock into each other, and hence there is the production of heat when they are dispatched or they start moving, right? So another example is striking a matchstick on the rough surface, it catches fire. This is a typical example that when the girl rubbed this matchstick on the surface of the box, the matchstick catches fire. So there is some production of energy, some production of heat energy, which leads to this fire, right? So this is another disadvantage, that there is a release of heat during the production of friction. So students, this was all about why friction is necessary and why is it evil for us as well. Till now you studied that how friction is necessary to us, but it's not always that we require that much of friction. We require certain amount of friction for every cause, right? So we try to increase and reduce friction according to our need. This is what we are going to study in this lecture. The topic is increasing and reducing friction. We have to increase and reduce friction according to our needs. So let us see a few examples which will make this clear to you. First of all, the sole of your shoe is grooved to provide the shoes better grip on the floor. There is a picture of the shoe, of any shoe. You can check your shoes as well. There is a pattern in the sole. This is to provide you a good amount of friction so that you can walk properly. It gives you good amount of friction so that you do not slip, you do not walk fast or slow, your foot stays comfortable. So friction plays a lot of a big role in due to which you can walk properly, right? So friction is very important to us. So we try to increase friction by adding this kind of pattern to our shoes, right? Then the treaded tires of cars and trucks and bulldozers provide better grip with the ground. Now students, cars, trucks, bulldozers or bigger vehicles require a good grip on the road. If they do not have a good grip, they may fall down during turning directions or changing their roads, right? So due to that, we have to provide a good amount of friction so that they stay firm on the road. They can roam around properly on the roads. So this is a picture of a truck tire. You can see these kinds of tires in trucks, buses and bigger vehicles. There are vehicles that carry cars as well. We have such big trucks. So for those trucks especially, we require tires which have a good hold on the road. They have a good grip so that they do not fall down, right? They do not stumble and they reach the destination properly. So the tires are treaded to increase friction. This is how we increase friction. How, students? We have basically provided an uneven surface. Right? This is an uneven surface. Now this uneven surface provides better interlocking. We studied that friction is all about the interlocking of two surfaces. So when this tire is on the road, it is not that smooth, right? It provides better interlocking and hence friction is increased. Same is for shoes. Earlier, if you have a completely flat shoe, there will be less friction as compared to a shoe that has a different pattern on its bottom, right? So this kind of shoe provides a better friction, provides a better walk to you, right? It is good for our health as well, for our joints as well, and for our knees. So this is the use of increasing friction. We deliberately increase friction in some situations by, how do we increase this friction? When we need this kind of friction, how do we do that? How do we make that change? Basically, there are another examples. There are brake pads in the cycle, the cycle that you ride, or any scooter or bicycle or any automobile such as cars. We have brakes. Now what is the role of brakes? Brakes, when they are not being used, they are just present near the tire. When you press the brakes, For example, this is the tire of a cycle and here are the brakes. When you press the brakes, they hold the tire tightly. They hold the tire tightly, which increases friction and hence decreases the speed. So here also we are decreasing friction so as to moderate our speed, so as to stop our bicycle or scooter from riding. So brake system in automobiles is also an application of friction. Now kabaddi players, if you have seen the game of kabaddi, in kabaddi the players rub their hands with soil. There is soil kept for them near the ground so that they can rub their hands with soil for a better grip of their opponents. In the game of kabaddi, you have to hold the opponent and do not let him cross the line. So how would this be done better, in a better way? Basically, you should have a good grip on the opponent. So when a kabaddi player rubs soil on his hands, the moisture is gone and hence the hands are not slippery. So the friction is increased here as well. How does this help? When he rubs soil, there is no moisture, there is an uneven surface on the hand which is not smooth any longer, right? So when he holds the opponent, there is better interlocking again. You are applying force for better interlocking, you are applying some force due to which the interlocking gets better and there is generation of a good amount of friction. Now students, gymnasts, if you have seen gymnasts, they perform really good exercises and different activities, apply some coarse substances on their hands to increase friction for better grip. So obviously friction is being used to better the grip. What does this mean? That when we increase the friction, the grip becomes better. Obviously grip means we are holding something. If the smoothest surface and it is slippery, we would not be able to hold it better, right? We can hold it better when there is good friction, there is good interlocking between the two surfaces. Hence, friction is used for better grip. Now students, in some situations, although friction is undesirable, in some situations we do not require friction, we need it to be slippery. What are these kinds of situations? First of all, we sprinkle fine powder on the carom board. You have a picture in front of you in which kids are playing carom board. Now you must have noticed after 2 to 3 hours, if you have played for a longer time, or if you are playing after 2 to 3 days, you sprinkle a talcum powder on the carom board. Here you sprinkle talcum powder. Why do you do so? Because after some time, after the elimination of powder completely, so students, in carom board you use talcum powder to increase the speed of these tokens that you are using, right? If you use talcum powder, the friction is considerably decreased and you can play better. So this is one example where we do not require friction. This is just a game. We have numerous examples in which we decrease friction in our daily lives as well. Now when a few drops of oil are poured on the hinges of a door, the door moves smoothly. You must have seen that in your house as well. You can ask your mother that whenever a door is not working properly, your mother basically, or your father, pours oil into the hinges of the door, which makes the movements smooth. How does that happen? When you pour oil, you are basically decreasing friction by making the surface smooth. Basically, you are decreasing the contact. Right? You are decreasing the contact. You are basically decreasing the interlocking. There is a layer of oil between the two iron articles present in the hinge right now, right? So in this case also, you are decreasing friction. Now let us see the third case. A bicycle and a motor mechanic uses grease between the moving parts of these machines. The moving parts sometimes cause rust or something happens due to which the working is not proper. So to ease it, basically a mechanic pours grease. A mechanic uses grease in the parts of a bicycle or a motorcycle so that it can work properly. There is the reduction of friction here as well. Reduction of friction so that the movement becomes smooth, right? So these were some examples where friction is undesirable and we should decrease the friction. Now how is reduction done? How is this reduction of friction carried out? Let us see. In all these cases, we were trying to reduce friction in order to increase efficiency. There are two kinds of cases. The earlier cases when we saw we were trying to increase friction and in order to increase efficiency, we needed friction for efficiency. In these cases, we are reducing friction for efficiency. Basically, for efficiency, we do not require friction in these cases. So we can moderate the friction with the help of some activities, right? When oil, grease or graphite is applied between the moving parts of a machine. For example, this is the moving part of a machine which is not moving properly. So you use either oil, grease, graphite is a lubricant, student, so graphite can also be used, right? So graphite, if we use such substances, a thin layer is formed there and moving surfaces do not directly rub against each other. This is what I was telling you, that the contact is reduced and the interlocking is reduced because there is a layer of oil between the two moving parts. Imagine there is another moving part here. So you are basically providing a layer of oil so that the movement becomes smooth and hence friction is reduced. Right, so now you understand how why we reduce friction and what basically happens when we apply grease or oil in the parts of a machine. Right, students? Now let us see another thing about reduction of friction. Interlocking of irregularities is avoided to a great extent. This is the main objective. This is the main objective of reducing friction. Basically, we are reducing the interlocking of irregularities. Reducing interlocking is the principle. This is the principle that we are reducing the interlocking. I told you that we are reducing the contact. Basically, we are reducing the interlocking of these layers. Now, friction can never be eliminated. You have to learn that friction can never be zero. There will always be some friction because a surface can never become perfectly smooth. So, there will always be some amount of friction present for every case. Now, movement becomes smooth. Friction cannot be eliminated, but it can be reduced. So, the movement gets smoother, right? The substances which reduce friction are called lubricants. As I just told you, if you use oil, you use grease, you use graphite, and for the machine parts, when you use oil and it reduces friction, it enhances the movement, it acts as a lubricant. Now what is a lubricant? Lubricant is something that reduces friction. It is slippery, it is smooth in itself, and it forms a layer around the machine parts which makes the working proper. Now in some machines, an air cushion between the moving parts is used to reduce friction. Not in all cases we use oil, grease or graphite. We can use air cushion in some moving parts as well. It is not suitable to use oil in all the parts. It sometimes reduces the work as well. So we use air cushions also. Now look at the diagram. It is explaining the action of lubricant. What is happening here? This is surface 1. And this is surface 2. Imagine this is a book, imagine this is a table, and this is a book. Right? Now what is happening? You have applied a lubricant. Now what does lubricant do? Lubricant enters inside the irregularities of both the surfaces. Right? Now certainly there are reduced irregularities, reduced interlocking, and hence reduced friction. This is what we are doing with the help of a lubricant. Basically, we are reducing the interlocking of the two surfaces and hence we are reducing the friction in turn. So students, now we have learnt that in some cases we require friction, in some cases we do not require friction, and according to that we can change the amount of friction that we are facing. For some cases we use lubricants, for some we use talcum powder, for some we use sand or other substances to increase friction. So it depends on what kind of a situation we are in. So we can moderate friction according to our needs. So students, this was all about the necessity of friction and its moderation. Wheels reduce friction. Now students, you must have heard that wheel is a very important invention to us. It has brought a revolution into our civilization because it is very, very useful to us. Starting from transportation to other uses, wheels are extremely valuable to us. There are two pictures in front of you. In the first picture, a child is carrying a bag. Now imagine this bag without tires. If there are no rollers under the bag, would the bag be easier to carry? No, it would carry much more weight and it would be difficult to carry that bag without these tires. But with these tires, the motion has become very easy. The boy does not have to put much efforts so as to pull the bag with him, right? So wheels reduce friction, right? If there were no tires, the bag would, this would be the bag and it would have this much contact area with the ground. More interlocking would be seen. So instead of this situation, we are using rollers or we are using wheels in order to reduce friction and to enhance motion, right? This wheels basically reduce friction. As you can see, it is a smaller wheel. Now it has only this much part in contact, which also keeps on changing as we move forward, right? If we keep on pushing, the area of contact keeps on changing, so there is not much time for the ground and the surface of the tire to get interlocked. So the friction is very, very less. Now in the second picture, what do you see? First of all, in the first case, what do you do? In this activity, what are you doing is, you take a book and you try to slide it on a table. Just a book, and try to slide it. What will you see? It won't slide much, it will stop after some time. Now repeat this same activity, but what change are you doing in this activity now? You are placing 3 pencils under the book now. You have placed pencils and now you try to push the book. You have placed 3 pencils and now you are trying to push the book. Now you will notice that you will require lesser force to push the book and it will move farther away. It will move very far as compared to the first case when there were no pencils, there were just book. You pushed the book alone, but in the second case when you used pencils, you required much lesser force in order to push the books. So what is happening here? These pencils are acting like wheels for the book. Obviously these are acting like wheels and hence the friction is reduced because the contact area of the book earlier was this much. There was good interlocking, right? The interlocking was great because there was a lot of contact between both the surfaces. As soon as you introduced pencils, what happened? The area of contact was reduced to 1, 2 and 3. This was the contact of area only, which also kept on changing when pencils rotated, right? So you reduced the area of contact and you reduced interlocking and hence the friction is reduced, right? So wheels basically reduce friction. This is what we've learned. Hence they are extremely useful to us as well. You can imagine any kind of transportation nowadays, all of them have tires in some way, right? Road transport basically is happening due to wheels only. If there are no wheels, there won't be any transportation, right? Now let us study about rolling friction. I told you about rolling of tires. Let us see what rolling friction is. When one body rolls over the surface of another body, take a wheel for an example. This is the wheel, right? Now this is the wheel and this is the ground. Now what is the statement saying? When a body rolls over the surface of another body, this is body 1 and this is body 2, it is rolling on the surface of body 2. The resistance to its motion is called rolling friction. Now the resistance that is occurring for the wheel, the difficulty that the wheel is facing in moving is called as rolling friction, right? Now students, there is a picture in front of you. In the first picture we are talking about sliding friction, as we studied about in the first lecture as well, first or second lecture, that there are 3 kinds of friction now. First one was static friction, in which you tried to move a static body which was not moving earlier. You tried to start moving it, which is because and we also studied that static friction is more than sliding friction. It is easier to slide a body that is already moving instead of moving a body that is in a rest position, right? So the second kind of friction was sliding friction, and we already know that 1 is more than 2. 1 is static friction, 2 is sliding friction. Static friction is much more than sliding friction. Now the third case is rolling friction. Now we have to decide what would be the magnitude of this rolling friction as compared to 1 and 2. Now students, in the picture you can see sliding friction, right? there is a surface 1 and a surface 2. Now when you try to slide it, this is the contact, and here interlocking occurs, right? Interlocking is seen. There is a good amount of interlocking while sliding. Now come to the rolling friction, the third kind of friction, that is rolling friction. Now you can see that this is the substance that is rolling, surface 2 and surface 1 is our ground again, which is same as in the case of static friction, so sliding friction, sorry. So when a body rolls, it changes its contact area, right? The surface keeps on changing and there is much less time to get interlocked, right? So rolling reduces friction. It is always easier to roll than to slide a body over another. As you can see in this picture, sliding is much more difficult as compared to rolling, because you are changing the area of contact again and again, and hence you are breaking the interlocking. Here the interlocking stays for a longer time because the area of contact is also large, hence the interlocking is large, hence it is very difficult to slide a body, while it is very easy to roll a body, right? Now that is the reason it is convenient to pull luggage fitted with rollers, as I told you in the first slide as well, that it is easier to slide to roll something instead of sliding the object, right? So wheels are much important to us. Now we have understood that rolling friction is much less, so rolling friction is smaller than sliding friction. So what did we understand? That the largest magnitude is of static friction, which is the one is static friction. Then we have sliding friction, which is lesser than static friction, and then the least values of rolling friction. Rolling friction is the least of all the three frictions, because rolling faces a much less resistance by the ground, and hence the friction is very, very less. Now students, sliding is replaced in most machines by rolling by the use of ball bearings. In most cases we are reducing sliding and we are using rolling much more, because there is less friction as compared to sliding friction, right? So common examples are the use of ball bearings between hubs and aisles of ceiling fans and bicycles. This is the kind of ball bearings. Ball bearings are used in ceiling fans and bicycles so that the friction of sliding is reduced, and we introduced rolling friction instead of sliding friction. This is the kind of ball bearings that we use in fans and cycles. You must have seen them. You have cycles at your home. You can check for ball bearings, so that to reduce sliding friction and to introduce rolling friction, so that we are supposed to use lesser and lesser energy in order to move that object. We have to provide less energy in order to carry out the work, right students? So this was all about rolling friction. So what have we learnt now? We have learnt about static friction, sliding friction and rolling friction. What did we get to know? We got to know that static friction is the highest, because when a body is at rest, so it requires much more force to move the body which is at rest. Then we have sliding friction, which means when we slide a body that is already in motion, it is the friction is reduced very much, and the sliding friction is much less than static friction. Then the third kind of friction that we saw was rolling friction. Now rolling friction is much lesser than sliding friction, because you are changing the area of contact at every instant, and hence interlocking is reduced, right? So rolling friction is very less. So this was all about kinds of friction and rolling friction. In the next lecture, we will be studying about fluid friction.